Officially welcome then Liz Kerin to the Fresh Fiction Book Club tonight. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to meet you.
Same here. So Liz, for our readers that are new to you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you first start writing?
Sure. Well, I am an author and screenwriter and playwright. So I've been writing in some form, some medium for the, majority of my life. I grew up on the East Coast in the New York area where I was doing a lot of theater as a kid. And kind of what happened was I was acting when I was very, very young and started writing plays with a repertory theater company I was a part of and realized, oh, I'm a much better writer than I am actor. And that was it. So I was like 15 when that started happening. And then went to NYU Tisch for dramatic writing and, started pursuing screenwriting and playwriting and television writing really, intensely after college. So that was like around 2010 and moved to LA and still really missed writing books. I had written lots of genre short fiction when I was younger. So like a lot of sci-fi and horror and things like that. But I kind of abandoned it for a little while because, movies were very sparkly. And I don't know. And then realized how much I missed it. And so during my tenure as an assistant in LA, I wrote the manuscript for my first book, which was a YA fantasy called The Phantom Forest, which came out in 2019. So Night's Edge is my second book. And I'm so happy that I found my way back to writing fiction. I feel great about it. So now we're here and we're talking about Night's Edge.
But those are very different styles of writing. Doing screenplays and plays. I mean, there's a lot of writing that you have to put on because people are seeing it, but they don't get into people's heads, different from a manuscript. So how do you approach the two? Or do you find that you have to do a separate version of them and get into the right headspace?
Yeah, there's definitely like a bifurcated headspace, no doubt about that. Like, Night's Edge has been super interesting because we're also in tandem with doing the edit on this first book. I was also developing it for television. And so many, you walk into that situation not wanting to change a lot of things about the book you wrote because you made those things work. But, for anyone who's read this book, that it takes place so intensely in Mia's point of view. And it's this little like jewel box of a character study. And she lives this very isolated life. So it makes sense that you're so deep in that POV. That's really, really hard on television. So it was this interesting process of like, well, can she have a friend? Well, the point is that she doesn't really have friends. Well, what if she has a friend who's not really a friend and she's lying to that friend? And like, just having to find all these shortcuts so that you can get her backstory and her situation and her trauma across without, there are screen adaptations that use voiceover, like pulled directly from the book, which can be super effective. And I've seen it work great. I tried it and it didn't work in this one. And that was my own words. And I was like, no, we're not doing that. So we found a way, but yeah, it's two very different styles. And people often ask which one I prefer, and I don't have an answer. I really don't. They're both very special.
Well, and it's also interesting that you were able to work on your own screenplay of the work that you originally developed. Do you think that gave you more freedom in a way, or was it more restrictive? Because like you said, no, this is something that is inherent with the character. I have to somehow figure out a way that this stays into the film version of it.
Yeah, I think that it was challenging, but only because I had to find a new way to look at certain sequences and certain moments in the story to externalize them and make them more cinematic. What was, I have been present to protect certain really important things about this character and about her journey, and just to make sure that we don't forget where it started, because you go, developing for film and television is like a years long process, and you do so many drafts and so many different people give you feedback and get in the kitchen with you, that sometimes you just need to go, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't remember who this character is. And having been on the other side of that, because I've adapted other people's work, it's important to be able to be the one to have that voice. And a lot of authors, I felt very privileged to get to be in the kitchen, so to speak, because a lot of authors do not have that privilege. So it was a really eye-opening experience for sure.
And of course, as readers, we're always in that debate afterwards of like, well, we're familiar with the book, so why did you change this in the TV or the film? And
yeah, sometimes we just have to. Yeah, like I can see, because I, of course, and went to listening to everybody's answers to those questions earlier was really interesting. Oh, do you watch the film first or read the book first? And so sometimes when I am a book fan and I see the film, my naivete would speak for me and say, why would they choose to do that? Why would you change that? It was perfect. There were a lot of people in that kitchen telling that person to change that. And now I understand how it works and how the sausage is made. I'm using a lot of food metaphors. I think I'm hungry. I think
hungry, yeah. Well, see how I'm going to wrap this back to the book. I mean, so with Night's Edge, it's a vampire story. You're not really calling her a vampire, but I mean, I read an interesting review where they were calling it gruesome and heartfelt. Those are not usually words that go together in most novels. So what was the inspiration behind Night's Edge and Mia and Izzy?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to tell a mother-daughter monster story. I just really felt like there was a lot to unpack between two characters, a parent and a child who experienced a trauma early on in their relationship and their bonding as a parent and child, and inspired by some experiences I'd had when I was younger. And just vampires became the vessel to unpack all of that. Because I never set out to write a vampire book. It wasn't really my, I wouldn't say it wasn't my wheelhouse, but I wasn't a super fan. I understood the rules of the game and all the vampire tropes very, very well. So I think what I ended up doing was taking what I knew was viscerally horrifying about monsters, about vampires, and really zoning in on the grief aspect of vampirism, which is, being fated to an eternal life that maybe you didn't choose and having to live it very monstrously. And there's a lot that comes with that emotionally, especially when you have family members who get roped into that monstrous cycle, so to speak. And I thought that vampirism was a really ideal vessel for exploring themes about addiction and codependency and coming of age, especially when you have a character who literally cannot come of age. So it was just so fertile and so rich and interesting. I couldn't look away and I couldn't stop digging deeper. So that's how we ended up here.
Well, and that's what I think is so interesting with this book also, is that the vampirism and the infection is really kind of almost the gateway in a way to provide, here is the setting, but the rest of the story, like you said, the codependency and the relationship, I mean, that's really the heart of it. And those are, I think, where it's so heart-wrenching is, I mean, those are situations that people can find themselves in just normal circumstances. So it lets them kind of take that almost intermediate step away in a point of removal where they can then ultimately really dig into these areas.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head there. I love writing in this genre because yeah, it kind of creates this lovely umbrella almost between me and my experiences I might be drawing from, or just, you know, the really heavy process of writing something that's very violent and upsetting, that might remind me of any number of things I've encountered personally. So it creates this buffer that allows you to explore. And I think that's a really powerful reminder of why we love this genre.
And what did you do to get into the right mood and headspace for this? Because you are dealing with such heavy subjects. And so if you're revisiting things, how do you get into the mindset to put it down on paper? And then what do you do to surface out of it and get back to that you can actually enjoy where you are now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I wrote the majority of this first draft during the pandemic, where I was just so stuck and so isolated in my house, as we all were. So that kind of, that added to the headspace that was necessary to write these
Did you have
characters.
the idea before the pandemic, or did it come up during the pandemic?
I had the idea before the pandemic. I knew who these characters were. I knew I wanted to do something with a mother and a daughter and vampirism that had been with me for a long time. Um, it was really only when the pandemic began that I understood the mechanics of the world building and what would feel believable and grounded, because that was really important to me, was that these two women felt like someone who could live next door to you. I didn't want to do anything that felt too far-fetched. And so the world around them, a world that, vampires exist, had to have some, a kernel of reality. And the pandemic certainly afforded that to me as a writer. So yeah, to answer your question though, so I was writing this isolated in my house, and I had two wonderful dogs that required lots of exercise and attention. So like would always get up and walk them around. And then I got a new puppy during the edit of this who needed tons of attention. And she was just being like, sucker punched with sunshine every morning. So to get yourself out of like a dark headspace, here, have a corgi, have a puppy. She's perfect. And then during the pandemic, I was,
lifesavers, yes.
yeah, she was literally a lifesaver. I was like, I need to get this puppy. It's what my brain needs right now. And then I was also playing a lot of Animal Crossing during the pandemic, as a lot of us were. So I would write a really upsetting sequence. And then I would go, water my flowers on my island, and I would resurface, bring myself out of it.
Well, another technical question, I'm going to call them time jumps in this book. So where you're visiting May when she's 10 years old, right? And then present day. So what was your process to keep those, I guess, timelines straight, as far as where were you at and what had you already communicated, or how it would tie into the bigger picture?
Yeah, I think that the 2010 flashbacks for me as a child really served to create the backbone of this emotional language that the present day really hinges upon. So all of these rituals that Mia and Izzy live their life according to, you meet them in the present day and you see the way they deal with the blood draw every night, and the restaurant Izzy owns, and how Mia has to keep everything very tight and locked down. You see them doing all these things, and then it's fun to go back in time and just be like, and here is the trauma that helped to create all these rules. And the 2010 story it does have it took the form of a road movie or book, but it's a road trip, and it's an escape. It's got a lot of action sequences in it, but there are also a lot of quieter moments where it's this young girl reckoning with a sea change in her life that is never going to reverse. So I think the edit was interesting going back and forth between the two timelines and making sure like, oh, did I say that in 2010? I think I did. So I don't need to talk about it again in the present. So the present day focuses more on Mia's coming of age and her realization that her mother might be getting back to some old habits and reconnecting with some dangerous people from her past. And then Mia wondering what lies beyond all of this.
Well, and now that we're on the other side of the pandemic, have you found that your writing process with all of this has also changed?
Yeah. And sometimes not for the better. Weirdly enough, there was something about writing during that time that, because of that isolation and because of there not being a lot of external distractions, there was nowhere to go, nothing to do. I was able to focus a lot better. So now I have all these little tricks to force myself to like sit down. I'll do, 500 words a day. Sometimes they come easily. Sometimes I'm counting them one by one and I have to turn off all my notifications and close all my doors. It's different now. I'm still getting a lot of writing done and I feel great about it, but I don't know, as horrible as the pandemic was for so many of us, there was a grain of positivity in there for me because of how it allowed me to go deep with my writing and write something that was important to me and not something somebody else was asking for, because I also do a lot of writing on assignment and, to make a living. And that was not the case this time. This was just something I wanted to do and I had time.
And you're not alone with that. I know for those of us that were able to work from home, I was able to get a lot more stuff done for exactly the same reasons: lack of distractions, able to focus, and really able to dedicate some of that time without people just randomly stopping by.
Yeah. It's like, there's nowhere to go. It's fine. Just take your time. But
hopefully better from a head case perspective.
Right. That's the
that you have more
trade-off.
distractions now, and hopefully maybe not quite as easily to get into that same darker mindset.
Yeah. It's like, I don't wake up in the morning in that dark headspace. I have to like get there, which is
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Your muse might not agree, but we are glad that you're waking up in a good headspace.
Yeah, me too. I'm there.
Well, what are you working on next? Because of course, that's what we're always interested in.
Yeah, well, so Night's Edge has a sequel. They just announced it a couple weeks ago. It's called First Light, and it, is the continuation of Mia's journey as she starts to, understand what actually happened in her past and reckon with all of that. And so we're doing, I just got a really wonderful edit back from my editor on that draft, and I'm, chipping away at it every day. So that'll be out in April of 2024. So like less than a year from now, which is super cool that they've already announced it. And then, I'm working on a proposal and sample chapters for another female driven horror that takes place in New York City in the 1930s and has to do with like occult magic and feminism. And it's very sexy and very dark and very weird. It's a weird one for me, but I'm really enjoying it so far.
You're taking me down a little bit of a different tangent I didn't plan on. With the 1930s, we've talked about this before in some of our other book clubs, and there's so many of us that are fascinated with that time period, and it doesn't seem to be one that's regularly visited by authors. So what was it about that time that really appealed to you that you wanted to write something during that era?
Yeah, I was really interested in the shifting economic situation. I know that's a very dry, answer for this, but the Great Depression, which came into being in the early 1930s, and all these disenfranchised people who are just trying to find a way to survive, reminds me of a lot that we are, encountering as Americans today. There's just a lot of shifting economics and fear and uncertainty. And the the magic and the horror aspect of this story, so the genre stuff, has to do with like wanting to turn to mystical people who might have all the answers in this deeply uncertain time. So I am a millennial and we're all obsessed with astrology, for example. We all know our rising sign and our moon, and we all have like the Channy app, and it's a whole, yeah. And I think and it was, you know, it brought to my attention that the reason that like my age group got really into that has a lot to do with the uncertainty that we have faced as adults, step by step, year by year, economically, in a weird way. And yeah, there was something about that was just interesting. And so I found my way into that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, you'll have to come back on that.
Oh, yeah.
Fill us in. Definitely want to hear how that goes.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, let me switch over to what we call our fresh fiction facts. These are a series of questions that hopefully answers come just to the top of your head on them, okay? They're not meant to stump you, although occasionally we do. So I'll start off with an easy one. If you were stuck in an elevator, who would you want to be stuck with?
Like, fictional, dead or alive?
Fictional, real, could be anyone.
I'd love to be stuck in an elevator with Anne Rice, because she could tell me stories for however many hours we're stuck in that elevator. And I would just sit there and be like, yeah, tell me more. Tell me more. And then the elevator would start and I'd be like, no, it's fine. Me and Anne are going to chill. Like, she's still talking.
Exactly. Right. What, if you couldn't be a writer, what would you do?
I would love to be an archaeologist. I love, you know, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt. Just like, I was fascinated with, God, I was like 10, 11 years old and we were studying, you know, King Tut's tomb in history class when I was, you know, in 5th grade. And I went down the rabbit hole. I read everything I could about that excavation and the curse and all of that stuff. I love it. And as I've gotten older and learned more about, you know, the way the West has handled art that was taken from these historic sites, if I were in that world, in that career now, I would love to be a part of this movement to like return artifacts to their native homes, which is super important. So yeah.
Cool. What is the craziest thing that you've bought online?
Oh my God. Craziest thing. Let's see. There's a safe for podcast answer and a not safe.
Well, give us the safe for the podcast and we'll give the other answer afterwards.
Okay. This actually just happened super recently. Maybe it's not the craziest thing, but it was like the most annoying thing. I custom ordered a pair of like knockoff Doc Marten boots that like had this really, really cool yellow and black like design on them. But like the sizes were Australian. And so they came and they were like massive. They were like clown shoes. And I put them on and I was just laughing and laughing in the mirror. I'm like, I can't keep these. Look at these. And then I tried to return them and they were going to charge me like over $100 to mail them back to Australia. And I was like, I will not do that because they were custom. So now, I don't know, they're just in my house. If anyone wants a giant pair of Australian clown shoes, like message me, I guess.
Keep them for a future Halloween costume.
Yeah, I guess.
You know.
I don't know. It was like an Instagram purchase. You know how sometimes you get like the ads and you're scrolling, you're like, yes, I like that. And then the next morning you say, what did I do? So.
Well, kind of along those lines, what luxury item can you absolutely not live without?
Ooh. Gosh, it's not really a luxury item, but I don't travel anywhere without all of my Drunk Elephant face serums and lotions and what have you, especially the baby facial. Like I will spend money on that. I will not leave home without it.
Well, I'm sure some people are going to ask you about that in the after chat. Don't worry.
Good stuff.
What bad habit has followed you since college?
Oh, gosh. Bad habit. Collecting dogs. Collecting dogs that I think need me.
I don't know if that's a bad habit.
I got my first dog like when I was 19 and shouldn't have had a dog. I was in college. Nobody should have let me have her. And I was like, oh, I want more. And it, I just kept getting more.
So what is the largest number of dogs that you've had at any one time then?
At one point there were 3. One was living with my parents, but like there was a revolving door of 3.
Okay, 3 is manageable. That works.
Yeah, it wasn't so bad. It wasn't so bad.
Don't worry, we're not going to look at you askance on 3. That's okay.
Oh, no.
Okay, you've been kidnapped.
Oh my God.
But they return you in 2 hours because you're not going to stop talking about what?
I'm not going to stop talking about the lore behind every Boy Genius song and what they all mean, and making them listen to the album over and over and over again. They will return me immediately.
What is your favorite writing fuel?
I always have 3 beverages on my desk. I have my my hydro flask with my Nightfire sticker. I have nitro cold brew. I have a cold brew maker at my house. And then if it's, after 4 or 5 o'clock, there will also be a glass of wine. Usually if it's summertime, it will be a crisp white. And if it's wintertime, it will be a red.
Okay. What is your most dog-eared or reread book?
Oh, well, this is a fun story. I have a copy of The Giver that I had in elementary school in 4th or 5th grade. We had read it in school for class, and I kept that paperback copy my whole life and moved across the country with me multiple times. And just last month, I took that copy. It's beat up, it's dog-eared, it's highlighted. And I took that very copy to the LA Festival of Books, and I met Lois Lowry and I had her sign it. And it was
wow.
Bucket list item. Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
For a while, when I first met authors, I felt really bad about giving them a book that was dog-eared and had the spine all done. I'm like, I feel I should give you a perfect book for signature. Until one was like, oh no, this is a sign that it's well loved, and you've obviously read it multiple times. Like, oh yeah.
Yeah. I handed it to her and I said, just so you know, I've had this since 1996. So like, that's why it looks like this. And I think she appreciated that. If it were me doing the signing, I would love that. If someone gave me a totally beat up copy of one of my books, that'd be awesome.
Well, going back to our name game question, are you a book or a TV show series? Which do you usually do first?
Usually, I like to read the book first when I can. Sometimes I don't always know that something was a book until I've watched the show or the film. And then I learn that after the fact. So it really depends. Also, nowadays, because of just social media and the internet being awesome, I find out that things are in development as TV shows really early. So like I can read a book well in advance of that show coming out and have a working knowledge of it. So that's really cool. But in the past, there have been a lot of times where I just simply don't know. So it's kind of 50-50 for me.
Okay, Liz, what is the best way for our readers to stay in touch with you and follow what you're working on next?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Liz Kerin, Kerin, all one word. That is kind of the only social media I'm super active on. I have a TikTok. It's Liz Kerin author. I don't use it very much. I'm mostly a lurker, but I have some cute, silly videos up there if that's your thing. And then I have a website, and it's lizkerin.com.
Awesome. Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Even though your books might be described as gruesome and heartfelt, you have been a joy to talk with tonight.
Oh, thank you. I so appreciate being here.
So stick around for our after hours happy hour with our readers.